Well, first, I want to say good morning. Thank you, Professor Taylor Duncan, for the opportunity to present to your students. I know when I saw the subject, it's the social for me, and it was discussing ways to use social media to do fundraising. It reminded me of the United Way meetings we were required to attend back when I worked in newspapers. I remember that a lot of my coworkers used to dread those meetings because they would say, they're just going to make us feel bad and then hit us up for money. And why can't they just ask us for the money? Which made me laugh because it was true. Sometimes the stories were very heart-tugging. But I always respected the way the local United Way offices used real people and their stories to appeal to our charitable side. The presentations, typically video, were typically very well done, and at least in my case, they were successful because I always donated at least what the organization called my fair share to support their causes. So I think that you have to respect the craftsmanship that they put into those presentations, connecting real people to real issues, making the something that's sort of out there conceptual, making it real. And, I just always respected that. And I think that generally speaking, people underestimate the power of stories. Sometimes I hear students say, well, I don't like to write. And I kind of get that from a mechanical perspective, but I think sometimes they underestimate that, well, you're already communicating. Why can't you just communicate in a written manner? And when I hear I don't like to write, I hear that from our mass communication students as much as I do from any other major on campus. I think my first thought typically is, then why are you in college? Because you're going to have to write to get through college. But my second thought is, then how do you expect to do this for a living? If you're a journalism and mass communications major, you're going to be required to communicate. And some of that is going to require writing. You can't make a podcast or a video or a film without a script or a screenplay. You have to have a story to tell. And when you tell me that you don't like to write, then that tells me you aren't paying attention to how many stories you actually consume all day, every day. From my perspective, yes, the Savannah Morning News is stories. CNN is made up of stories. But so is the Shade Room, Media Takeout, the New York Times, TMZ, Facebook, even Instagram, and Twitter. No matter where you find it or what you call it, they are all stories of some kind, and they are all storytelling. Even TikTok. To me, what is the Busset Challenge except an ugly duckling story told in 30 seconds and with a couple of music clips? So storytelling is the foundation of any kind of communication we do as human beings, and I think that holds up whether we are being verbal or nonverbal, whether it's something that we're writing. It could be an image, a photograph, a 2-minute video clip, or even a full-length motion picture. They are all stories in some way or another. And all stories have, or should have, to be successful, a start, a middle, and an ending. You look at the quote, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Now, I remember sitting in the movie theater when this scroll went up the screen, and it kicked off the Star Wars saga. We got to meet Luke Skywalker. We watched him recruit and join his father's mentor to take on the evil empire, which they defeated. And then everybody celebrated by dancing in the woods with the little, I call them ghetto/jungle Care Bears. But Star Wars was a big story that took 3 movies and several years to tell, and it eventually was expanded to 9 movies across 4 decades. It was a huge story, but it still had the basic components: a start, a middle, and an end. And this holds up on the small scale for communicating or for telling stories. If you get a text message that says, be sure to pick up some bread on the way home, there's a story there. It starts because someone in your life wants or needs bread and has discovered there is none. The middle, they're reaching out to you for your help. You go and get the bread. And when you bring it home, everyone eats, everyone's happy. That's our happy ending. our epic journey is concluded. And even along the nonverbal realm, my dad was great at that. He could look at me a certain way, and without saying a word, I understood what was being communicated to me. So whatever I was doing that provoked his attention, that was the start. And the middle would be what in TV terms might be a flashback. And I would think back to other times when I was doing something he didn't approve of. So I knew that the ending was up to me. I could stop what I was doing and have a happy ending, or I could ignore him and keep on doing stuff, and I could have a really bad ending. And I got all that with a basic look. Start, middle, end. So, if we accept that all stories have starts, middle, and endings, and if we accept that model, then you have to think about what happens if you leave out any part of it. If you overlook the start, you are missing the opportunity to present yourself and your cause, and you're missing a chance to give out basic information that your audience needs. In journalism, we used to call them, and we still do, the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. If you leave out the middle, you're missing an opportunity to build upon the basic information that you provided in the start. This allows you to give a broader context. Say if you introduce a person, then you get to introduce that person's situation. If you introduce that person's situation, or if you start a situation, you get to introduce the people that it applies to. You get to develop them beyond just being names and locations. And if you leave off the ending, you don't give your audience a chance to find out how they can be part of the story, how they can help hopefully have a happy ending. This is where your call to action comes in. Who wants to see the start of a story and watch it develop and then miss how it ends? Or maybe you walk into the middle of a story and you spend so much time playing catch up trying to figure out who is who and what's going on. Or you have the start and the ending, but there's so much in the middle that you've missed out and you can't really appreciate everything that happened. So start, middle, ending, these hold up across genres. Now, with the tools we have at our disposal now, they can help us tell stories. And in particular now, I'm talking about creating videos. And I'll come back to why video is my emphasis. But we look at some of the tools that are required. They're not very complicated. And they don't have to be expensive. You can start with something as simple as your own smartphone. But as long as you know going in what the story is that you want to tell and what are the images that will help you tell that story. Now, not everyone has an iPhone, but a lot of people do. So let's start with that. This is a setting that I think is specific to iPhones. But if you have another type, you can check. Go into your camera settings and make sure that your video setting is on most compatible, not high efficiency. I think by default, your iPhone will be set for high efficiency, which engages a special type of file compression that Apple uses when you're shooting photos or recording video. Now, when you're trying to save space on your phone, this is a good thing, but it can work against you when you're trying to use those files somewhere else. Maybe you're moving them to a laptop or emailing them to someone else. Now, if you have an Apple computer to go along with your Apple phone, you probably won't even notice this. You shouldn't have any issues opening those files. But a person using a Windows computer, or maybe even a Chromebook, though I hope you have something a little more powerful than a Chromebook, might not be able to even open those files. Choosing the most compatible setting will make sure your files can be shared easily. And a tip, when you send a file to someone, if they receive it and the part of the name at the end is HEIF or HEVC, that means you need to go back and check your settings and make sure it's most compatible. HEIF is high efficiency image format, and HEVC is high efficiency video compression. So those are files types that are unique to Apple, at least they are for now. But make sure if that happens, that's where the problem comes from. You didn't choose most compatible. And I work in a department that emphasizes video production, and everybody's talking about 4K and even 8K. but I would tell you, don't shoot in 4K. It sounds impressive, and the video does look great, but the files can be hard to manage. Sometimes the file sizes can be prohibitive, and sometimes even the compression that the files use make them really hard to handle. I mean, even some platforms don't even let you upload 4K files. They can be tough to manage size-wise, they can be hard to edit, and really you aren't missing a whole lot. One of the things, or should I say most of the things that we enjoy looking at already are not presented in 4K, including most shows on network television and most motion pictures, whether you're looking at them in a movie theater or on your TV at home. Most of those are presented at 1080p. Now, don't get bogged down with what that means. Yeah, that's full HD versus 4K, which is considered Ultra HD. But again, just stick to 1080p. If you shoot your footage in that format, you should be fine. Now, beside 720, 1080, and those other numbers, you'll see 24, 30, and 60. Those are frame rates. As far as choosing which one you want, if you want your video to look like a film, you set it to 24. 24 is also what you typically see with national TV commercials. If you set it to 60, it's going to look more like a video, or as I say, a soap opera, or maybe even a local TV commercial. If you are going, and 30 works as well, I just want to make sure I say that. But if you're going to want to use slow motion effects, you may even see the option to choose 120 or maybe even 240. But I don't recommend using those unless you know exactly how you're going to be using that footage. A lot of times when you increase the frame rate past a certain point, you lose audio recording. So you'll have a nice looking file, but there won't be any sound with it. And sound is really important. Now, of course, you have the option of upgrading from your smartphone to a digital SLR like a Canon Rebel, or to a mirrorless camera like a Sony. I would say that in general, all three types can take nice still photos, but with the digital SLR and a mirrorless camera, you sometimes have the option of changing the lenses. So if you want to shoot a little wider, you can do that. If you want to zoom in to something from a distance, you can do that as well. Smartphones, the newer ones with multiple lenses, do have this capability, but it's not always as clean and easy to use as with a camera that's dedicated to that. And I would also say that in general, mirrorless cameras take better video because of how their autofocus mechanisms work. But if you're going to be doing a lot of video and still photos really aren't your thing or aren't your priority, it might make more sense financially to buy a digital camcorder. Even some of the least expensive ones, and I would say start at about $500, but they can give you a lot more bang for your buck than some of the best high-end DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. DSLRs and mirrorless cameras can do video, but a digital camcorder is built to do video. So you're going to get more capabilities. It'll be a lot less hassle for a lot of things. You don't have to worry about changing out cards as often. You don't have to worry about changing out batteries as often. Just make sure the one you look for, or the one you purchase, has a microphone input. Canon and Panasonic make some really nice models starting at some very reasonable prices. And by the time you get a DSLR or mirrorless that can do comparable things as far as capturing video, you're going to pay a whole lot more than that. But no matter what camera you decide to use, you want to make sure that you're recording quality audio. Now, you'll see on one screen here, there's a microphone on top of a camera. That's called a shotgun mic. It sits on top and it plugs into the side of the camera. And that will give you better sound typically than what you would get from the camera's built-in microphone. But a better solution might be to get an inexpensive lavalier mic, the kind of mic you see clipped to someone's shirt or blouse, and it's usually located within 6 inches of their chin or their mouth. It will give you better sound than the microphone that is built into the camera, and depending on the conditions, it will give you better sound than the microphone that sits on top of the camera. Your best case scenario is that you can find a lavalier microphone with a cord long enough that you can run it from the person who is being interviewed directly into your camera. If not, you may be able to run it from the microphone into a digital recorder. Later, you can combine the good audio from the lavalier mic with the good video from your camera, giving you the best possible result for creating a video. So I've dedicated a lot of time to talking about video creation because video is by far the most popular content on the web. There's a reason YouTube is such a dominant presence. But even though video is extremely popular, there's a limit to the amount of time most people are willing to spend watching any particular video. Super Bowl commercials aren't short only because they cost so much. Advertisers know most people will tune out after the first few minutes, sometimes even the first few seconds. You need to take that into account. Not only do most people prefer shorter videos, some of the most popular platforms have built-in limits on the amount of time that you can use to tell a story or present a case in video form. You need to familiarize yourself with those limits. And if you can find ways to work around them, great. But generally speaking, you should try to, and I use air quotes here, get in and get out in only as much time as you need. No more. Facebook right now allows you to upload videos as long as 4 hours, but there's a limit on the size of the video file that you can upload. So if you get carried away by trying to shoot too much footage or making the resolution too high, your file just won't work on Facebook. And a file that's 4 hours, but that is compressed small enough to fit under the size limit, is probably going to look pretty bad. That's not how you want to represent yourself or the cause you're supporting. Twitter enforces a file size limit of 512 megabytes and a time limit of 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Again, sometimes shorter is better. Instagram has limits that vary from 15 seconds to 60 minutes based on where you post the video. It's a little confusing, so I would recommend that you actually research the limits for whichever platform you're going to be preparing video. I won't put those numbers on a slide because they do change, and I want to make sure you have the most up-to-date information before you get started, no matter when that is. So obviously, video is not your only tool. PowerPoint, which I'm using here, is very popular for presentation, but it has a reputation of being boring and flat. The reason I think that happens is that some presenters use it as a data dump and can overwhelm with information that is dense, hard to read, and disengages the audience from the actual presentation. The audience can start reading the slide and forget that the presenter is even there. And that doesn't have to be the case. Recent upgrades to PowerPoint have really opened up possibilities for making presentations that are informative and visually appealing. In looking for some ideas to share with you, I came across a YouTube channel that specializes in teaching basic and advanced skills for using applications that make up the Microsoft Office suite. Now, there are a lot of tutorials for that software, but I thought this particular channel's videos, especially this one, 30 Ultimate PowerPoint Tips and Tricks for 2020, is really good. It's easy to follow, and I've actually used some of the tips from this video in my presentation. You can look him up on YouTube and find that video and dozens of others, or you can use this short link I created at the bottom of the screen, bit.ly/pptips20. That's another presentation tip. When you have a link that you want to share, go to one of the websites that lets you shorten the link to something people can write down quickly or even maybe remember. There are a handful of sites that allow you to do this. I chose Bit.ly because you can create a free account that lets you generate custom links. So instead of bit.ly.random series of characters, you can write custom shortcuts like I did here. pptips20, that's PowerPoint Tips 2020. Your links don't have to go to YouTube channels necessarily. They can go to anywhere. Your organization's website, to a particular page on that site, or even to a particular section on that site. It's very useful. I spoke earlier about social media platforms and how they have become such powerful methods for sharing content and for reaching out to different types of audiences. So the first thing I would say is to make sure your organization actually has a Facebook page. At this point, I would say this is probably more important than having a web page, because by their very nature, Facebook pages push information out to your audiences, and web pages still sort of require your audience to come to the page to find what you've posted. Nowadays, people are so busy, they don't have time every day to go to every website that they have an interest in. So use Facebook and think in terms, no matter where you post your content, of creating content and getting it out to your audience versus creating content and waiting for your audience to find it. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and other outlets have become daily destinations for just about everyone, from teenagers looking for the next dance challenge on TikTok to older citizens who are looking for information on family, church activities, or, nowadays, finding community locations where they can get the coronavirus vaccine. So if your organization does not have a Facebook page, it needs to create a Facebook page. And maybe that can be your job or part of your job within that organization. You need to take your organization's branding information, get that on the Facebook, and as soon as possible, you need to create a custom URL for your organization's Facebook page. If you work with the United Way or some other charity, if I just type that name into a search engine, I'm going to find hundreds of pages under that charity's name. So if you have the chance, try to customize it as much as you can. And in this particular instance, I'll say instead of just being facebook.com/page or groups and United Way, maybe you can say United Way of and do a geographic locator as part of that group name, the custom name. You want to make it easy for people to find you. And once you've created that page, you want to come up with a plan for making sure that you have content being published regularly. You don't want a dead page. One, people will stop looking for content from you, and that will hurt your future efforts. And also, your activity level affects how high or how much of a priority Facebook makes your content. If there are other pages that are already established for your community, you want to reach out to those pages. You can follow it or like it. You can reach out to the administrators for those pages and see if they will let you post your content on their feed. You can invite the admins and other people from their page to follow yours. You know, you're trying to build a virtual community so you can harness the power of the share button. When you have photos, identify the people in those photos and tag them. That way they see themselves on your page and their friends see them on your page. And you're building and broadening that footprint. So use your multimedia skills to create photos, videos, and write short write-ups so people can learn who your organization is, what you're doing, when and where you're doing it, and why the community should care and why they should want to participate. That's right. Those are the 5 W's again. You're telling stories on your Facebook. That's the goal across all of the platforms. In closing, all these platforms can work for your cause and they can work together for your cause. If you have a Facebook page, a link to that post should be shared on Twitter. If there's a photo with the Facebook post, and there should be, share that photo on Instagram with a link back to Facebook. Yes, there is software that will let you write something in one place and have it automatically pop up in other platforms. But I have found that personally and professionally, I got the best results when I manually curated content for different platforms to cater to their strength. Twitter and Facebook let you talk to your audience and hopefully let you grow your audiences. Instagram is more visual. People don't go there to read long captions or to see a screenshot of a large block of text. You want to do things that will pull people to you, that will get them excited about participating in what you're doing, hopefully in giving you their money to support your causes. You want to be engaging and you want people to care. If they don't care as much as you do, you want to make sure they care enough to help you make a difference for the causes that you care about. Thank you.